Welcome, everyone, and Happy New Year. We're glad you could join us at the first North Precinct Advisory Council meeting of 2024. Basically, I just want to say a quick welcome. You may have noticed after our last meeting, we did not get the recording out as promptly as we anticipated. It will go out along with the recording that we post of this meeting. I want to remind you all that we now have a Facebook page, very active Facebook page. We send out a lot of information, helpful information on crime, on fire prevention, etc. See, we've incorporated the Seattle Fire Department into our NPAC messaging. So if you would like to look for our Facebook page, it can be a great resource. With that, I want to say a thank you to the University Masonic Lodge. They have, again, donated the Zoom license for North Precinct Advisory Council for this year, and we appreciate it very much. And again, as I mentioned just a moment ago, Megan Westfall is out ill this evening, so her spot on the agenda is not filled, so we have a little flex time. And really with that, I want to just go ahead and dive on in and welcome our guest speaker, Harold Scoggins, the Fire Chief for Seattle Fire Department. Chief Scoggins, the floor is yours.
All right, good evening, everyone, and thank you for allowing me a few minutes to share a little bit about the Seattle Fire Department. And I put a few slides together. That'll keep me on track, and thank you for sending over a number of questions, and hopefully I'll answer those questions and more in my slides. But before I begin, a little bit about me. Been in the fire service for a few days now. I started my fire service career in the United States military in the Air Force. I was a firefighter from 1984 to 1989, where I had just a great career, and I got to go to places I never thought I would go in my life, like Korea and Sicily and Honduras and all over the United States. And I got out the military in 1989, joined the Glendale Fire Department, where I spent 26 years, rising to the rank of fire chief, where I became fire chief in 2008, and I was there until I left in 2015. Now I've been here in Seattle. April 1st this year will be 9 years for me. It has gone by in a blink of an eye. So lots going on in the department, and hopefully I'll answer some of those questions. First thing I'm going to do is share my screen, and if someone can tell me if that is working. Are you seeing that?
We are seeing you. It's working. Yes.
All right. So kicking off 2024. So some of the items you sent over for me to talk about today was to give a department overview and our staffing. I'll cover that. Our call load, significant responses, CPR training, how are we doing in fire prevention, a little bit of information about Health One, department updates, and then looking ahead. And that picture you see on the front is the fire we had just on New Year's morning at 823 Madison. That's a vacant building. We had the original fire in June of 2022. That was a pretty challenging fire then, and it was a pretty challenging fire just a few mornings ago. It ended up being a third alarm assignment with well over 100 firefighters there, 13 engines, 7 ladder trucks, and a variety of other vehicles. So there's a lot of things keeping us busy. We're in January 3rd so far, and I think we've already had 4 significant structure fires in the city. So a little bit about the department. So the department's broken up into 4 arms, basically. We have operations, resource management, our administrative section, and our fire prevention. Operations is who probably most of you folks see every day. That's all the fire engines, ladder trucks, aid cars, and medic units going out the door each and every day out of our 33 fire stations. That's about 900 firefighters that really staff our operations division. That's the biggest part of the department. And then we have resource management, and that's our safety division and risk management, all the things that we need to do to keep us in place, the investigations, the review of accidents, putting out policies. Our training arm is in-service training, as well as new recruit firefighter training. So they keep us busy. We have a lot that we have to stay in compliance with related to the WAC and 296-305. It really guides all of the things that we're responsible for each and every day. And then new recruit training. Last year, every year we pretty much have 2 recruit classes. Sometimes those classes are bigger than others. Last year, our goal was to hire 90 firefighters, and we exceeded that goal, but we didn't get 90 firefighters out of recruit training. It's a pretty rigorous process, and we generally lose quite a few in the training process, but that all happens under training. And then emergency preparedness. Those are the things that keeps us prepared for the earthquakes, the big fires, the floods, and all the things that we should be thinking about, even the pandemic. The reason why I think the pandemic response went so well is because we had a plan for it. We had a lot of things in play, and people knew what to do. And that happens in our emergency preparedness section. And then our fire alarm center and support services. The fire alarm center is our fire department dispatch center. So when the call comes in through 911, it'll initially go through the care department. And when they say fire or medical emergency, if it is, then it's transitioned to the fire department. And that's what we'll do, our protocols and deliver the right resource in a timely manner. And then support services is the last arm of that. We operate out of approximately 40 facilities. We have 150 vehicles that are moving around pretty much each and every day. And so it takes a lot to really keep that going. Just keeping everything in the cupboards, from paper clips to plates, to glasses, to computers, to fire hose, to ladders. We have a pretty large warehouse over in Soto that we keep all of our supplies at, and it keeps all of our facilities fully operating. That's important. On the administrative side of the house, we have 5 sections. Finance, you can imagine, working to keep almost 1,200 people paid on time, invoices sent, and all those different things with our complicated hiring system and our payroll system. Our finance team stays pretty busy. Kim, I think, is on the call. She leads our public affairs section, and that's our PIO, that's public education, that's CPR, and all those things that really is our external facing messaging for the organization. Then HR, trying to keep the department staff, not just for our sworn firefighters, but for all of our professional staff, keeps us pretty busy on a regular day. So we have a great team in HR. And then IT liaison, as I mentioned, trying to keep those 40 facilities with internet connectivity and computers working, as well as every piece of computer equipment and every one of our apparatus can be very challenging. So we keep that pretty busy. And then our public disclosure section. We get a lot of public disclosure requests, probably not as many as SPD, but we get our fair share. So that's enough to have a couple of people working on that pretty much every single day. That's important. And then the last arm is our fire marshal. That's fire prevention. So everything that's built in the city, we touch at some point, whether it's reviewing the plans, reviewing the engineering, approving the permits, and then final sign-offs for all those who live, work, and visit Seattle becomes very important for us. And then fire investigation. When we have the fires and we need to figure out cause and origin before we turn it over to ABS, that's where it starts at in our fire investigation unit. So that's a little bit about the structure of the department. So as I mentioned, 33 fire stations. You can kind of see the different colors on the map there. That breaks up into 5 different battalions. Battalion 4 is the northwest corner of the city in the green. Battalion 6 is the purple. I guess that's appropriate since the UW is in Battalion 6. And then the center of the city is kind of that orange color, and that's really where most of our runs come from in the downtown core. West Seattle is in the bottom left, Battalion 7 in the blue, and Battalion 5 is the yellow. And this structure is very important to us. Each one of those battalions, they have about 7 to 8 fire stations in each battalion. Each of them have a 24-hour battalion chief on duty, and we have 1 deputy chief on duty each day, 24 hours a day. And that becomes very important. So if we had a significant incident in the city, like we did the other night, units come from all over the city to support the big incident, but we move a lot of units around on a daily basis to try to maintain coverage. But if we had an earthquake and we lost radio connectivity, we lost our phones, we have systems in play where those local battalion chiefs would become basically the local fire chiefs. We have units that will go to high points in each of those districts to facilitate communication with our direct communication, because we know the repeaters may be down, but our radios would still work with our direct communication. So our structure is 24/7, 365 days a year, and that's enough that really keeps us busy around the city. And from time to time, I'm not sure if I should do questions at the end, or in the middle. But if you have questions, maybe throw them in the chat or wait till the end, and then I'll try to cover them as we get through the slides. One of the questions was about our annual report. We do an annual report every year. That there's a link that'll be in this presentation where you can go and grab it. We're working on 2023's annual report right now. There's just some visuals of the last 5 years, and that's a bit of a recap of the year of the department and all the different sections of the department, accomplishments that we've had, number of calls, challenging fires, and all the different things that go along there. And Kim, if you're on the call, maybe you could drop the link in the chat. So if they want to grab it right now, they can go ahead and grab it. But on our website, on the city's website, we have a link where you can go and grab any of our annual reports. So we'll be working on 2023's right now. That's one of the things that Kim and her team does. Staffing updates. Currently, we have 108 vacancies in the fire department. That's approximately 10%. Some of that comes into play because this year we got fully funded for 26 new positions. You may have heard over the last couple of years when the West Seattle Bridge closed, we put Ladder 13 and we put Medic 26 in service to serve West Seattle, the southern part, and to serve South Park and the southern part of West Seattle. Well, once we put those units in service, we were able to really analyze our coverage in those areas during the years that the bridge was closed. And what we saw is those areas of the city were really poorly served before those units went in service. So when it was time to reopen the bridge, we went through the process of making the case to keep those units. And we were successful in the budget, and they've been, they're January 1, they became fully funded for those units. So that means that this year we added 26 new positions to the department. So our sworn positions are approximately 1,100. Last year, we also we added a paramedic captain to support our Medic One training program, which is really important. We train all the medics in King County. They all ride on Seattle Fire Department rigs. Of their 2,000 hours, they do about 1,100 on our rigs each and every day. The class is like 10 months. They'll finish sometime in June, but that's pretty important for us. And we also add an additional fire prevention inspector. That equals our 26 positions that we added. In 2023, we hired 95 new recruits. So that was really good. But we only got 59 through recruit training, and that was a pretty big challenge for us. Normally, we have an attrition rate of about 20 to 25%, but our August class, it took a big hit. It lost approximately 50% of our recruits in training. It's a really rigorous program. Oftentimes, folks don't know what they're getting into when you have to wear the gear 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And once you put the gear on, then it's time to really go to work, throw ladders, pull hose, do rescues, and you're in that gear. And so we have a lot of injuries that come out of our training program, but we also have a lot of folks who really realize that this may not be the career for them. Just to give you a little perspective, we had a hiring application process in 2022 from March 1st to April 19th. We received approximately 3,000 applications during that 6-7 week period, and approximately 1,600 passed all the portions of the exam process. And that's our list that we have right now that we're working off of. The fire department lists are generally good for about 2 years, 4 to 5 classes, and then we'll have another class. In 2023, we had 59 retirements. So we were pretty much at a break-even point with how many we hired, actually got through the training, and how many retired. And we expected to be a little bit higher in that, but we lost too many in our second academy class. And to give you a little bit more perspective, April, I'll be here 9 years. We've replaced more than half the department in the last 9 years. We have a pretty senior department when I got here, and we are becoming a rapidly young department, really, really fast. Well over 500 hired in the last 9 years. So we're becoming a really young department. In 2024, next month, February, we have a class set to go with 55 new recruits. The offers are out there. The medicals are pretty much completed, the background psychs. So we're really looking forward to that class, getting ready to go. And we did a number of things to try to ensure more success along the way. We have a fire prep program where we bring them in during the months of October and November, and we allow them to train so they can understand the job that they're getting into. And then the ones who actually have job offers, we have a recruit prep program where we do a fitness assessment, working with our wellness coordinator, working with the nutritionist, making sure they're really getting dialed in so they're ready to go on February 14th. Because once it starts, it is a rapid training pace. That's really important. August of 2024, we'll start our planning progress for, we're in our planning process for our August class. We generally have 2 classes a year, one in February and one in August. So that class will go either the first or second Wednesday in August, and it will go for 15 and a half weeks. Each of our recruit training programs are 15 and a half weeks. It's all done in-house at our joint training facility at 9401 Myers Way. That's where we do our own training academy. We have our staff, our training staff that's assigned to recruit training, and we come in compliance with the WAC and NFPA and all the other guiding documents on how we train. It's approximately about 740 hours of training for our recruit training program. So, and they're tested multiple times a week, whether it's manipulative or didactic. But there's a lot of tests that they have to pass, and they're evaluated. When they come out, they have their firefighter ones, their firefighter twos, all of their EMTs are squared away, hazmat awareness, and a number of other certificates. So when they hit the floor on day one, they got all the certification. Now they just have to get the real life experience, and that's where they complete the balance of their 1 year probation. This fall, October approximately, we will open up our next firefighter application process, and it'll be a little bit longer than the 22 window. It'll be approximately 2 months instead of 6 weeks. And, you know, a little bit removed from COVID, we think we're probably going to receive between 4,000 and 5,000 applications, which is, you know, really a good number, a good population. And we get candidates from all over the country. We got a lot of candidates who leave other fire departments to come to Seattle. We're one of those unique organizations. We're a large metro department, but the amount of resources that we have from our technical rescue team, our hazmat team, our decon team, our marine team, our fireboats team, our divers, our rescue swimmers, and all the different areas that you can go into. We're pretty unique that you can do all those things in the Seattle Fire Department. So that's a little bit about our staffing. Our call load, you can see the down years during COVID when the world shut down in 2020. Our call load slowed way down to just under 80,000 calls. But clearly, as the world started to reopen in 2021, 93,000 calls, 2022, 106,000 calls, which is the most in our history by a long shot. And then 2023, just closing out, we calculated the data. We ran over 111,000 calls. So that's really busy, and it's showing up on multiple fronts, from the things that you see on the news every day related to overdoses, to fires, to everything that you can imagine. It is just getting very, very busy out there. And it's challenging for us maintaining all the other things that we have to maintain. But firefighters come into this profession because you often hear, I don't want to do the same thing every day. Well, I can tell you, our firefighters are not doing the same thing every day. And at some of our stations, they are out the door quite a bit. Our downtown aid cars are the busiest units in the department. They're probably running 18 to 19 calls every single 24-hour shift. And that is a busy day, and that's around the clock. Our downtown engine companies are all probably running 11 to 13 calls. Our downtown ladder trucks are probably running 7 to 9 calls, depending on the stations. So it is really, really busy out there. And this is how it breaks down. The red are the fire calls. So you can see we have a steady uptick in the number of fires in the city. And this is everything from a vehicle fire to a trash can fire to a building fire to an electrical fire. But you can see year over year, we're up by just under 1,000. But our BLS calls are still tracking pretty high, from 64,000 to 66,000. And our ALS calls are from 14,000 to 16,000. And we're noticing this on multiple fronts. And here's an example. In 2021, we ran about just over 450 cardiac arrest calls. And that is someone has had a full-on cardiac arrest. We're doing CPR and we're providing all the life-saving measures. But in 2022, we were over 620 cardiac calls. That's just in 1 year, 70 more cardiac arrest calls. Across the board, that's what we're seeing. So it's not just one thing. We're an aging society. We're getting older, and as we get older, we have more bumps and bruises. And we've worked with the community to educate them well to call 911. So we get called for some of the things you couldn't imagine, and for many of the things we really need to be called for. But either way, when we show up, our motto is here to serve. CPR training, we provide CPR training from the community, and it's on our website also. And hopefully Kim's on the call and you could drop that link in the chat. But to businesses, organizations, public and private schools, individuals, we have a variety of different CPR training, whether it's hands only, where you don't get a certificate for, or you could take the full on class and you can get a certificate for it. But that's one of the things that we do. We've been providing CPR in the Medic 2 program for well over 50 years, and we estimate that we've trained over 1 million people in those 50 years. And you often hear people in the medical profession say, if you ever want to have a heart attack, Seattle is a place to have one, because generally, not just the fire department, but our whole system is set for the save. And generally, our save rates are higher, and a lot of that is tied to the CPR programs. And then fire prevention. We've been on a building boom, and there's been a lot going. We slowed down a little bit through COVID. We haven't gotten our final numbers in for 2023, but through our key performance measurements through our third quarter, some of the things I'll just cover as an overview. We were up 17% in inspections overall. We were up by 25% by the third quarter. That just means to us the world is reopened, and there's a lot of things happening. Our fire investigation unit, they actually had a decrease in the number of investigations, and that may be tied to the dollar value that we've placed when we actually called them out to do an investigation. For example, it was 25,000. Now it's up to 75,000. So that plays into it. So they're down a bit in fire investigations. Special events. Boy, you can really tell the world is reopened by the number of special events. Through the third quarter, there have been over 1,500 special events, and compared to 1,250 in 2020 and 2019. And that's what we gauge it to before COVID, because we were really busy before COVID. But we're up by over 300 special events. And when you think about the fourth quarter and all the things we had just over the last weekend, with the Seahawks playing in the afternoon, the hockey game over at Climate Pledge, New Year's at the Needle, the concerts that were taking place, it's been a really, really busy year for special events. And you all need to know we staff every single one of them. If it's a concert, if it's a marathon, if it's a Seahawks game, if it's a Storm game, Sounders game, Kraken game, we staff every single one of them with our firefighters, whether they're doing BLS, basic life support, ALS, fire guard. At the larger events like the Seahawks, we have our hazmat team out there doing monitoring. So this past weekend at the Seahawks game, we probably had 30 to 40 firefighters on site at the game doing all of those different duties. So special events are really, really keeping us busy. Plan review, and this is a way to gauge, what's coming in the future by the plans that we're reviewing. So a 26% increase in the number of alarm and sprinkler plan reviews. What that means is they may not all be built next year or even the year after, but it gives us a gauge on what's in the queue and what's going to be built in the future. So all of these projects come through fire department, and then the number of inspections usually tell us how busy the work is out there, and that increased by 28%. So people are wanting their projects completed, they're wanting them done, and we have to have touches on those for all the fire and life safety systems, access, egress, and all of those things before any one project can get signed off. And then special hazards testing, that one was 10% lower. So we'll still figure that out. But all the other areas of work are really, really booming in the city. They may not all be coming out the ground yet, but in the future, there's still a lot of projects in the ground. And all of our fire companies, they have a big responsibility. They have approximately over 14,000 inspections that are done out of our fire stations. 82% of those inspections were totally cleared. Additional 7% had failures, and there's approximately 11% we didn't get to. And this is the byproduct as the community gets busier with runs. There may not be enough time in the day to get to all the inspections, and we missed it by about 11% this year. Some of those are tied to businesses being closed or businesses closing completely, and the systems are not being updated yet. So there's a variety of factors in there, but pretty much almost 90%, we got inside the door and touched them in some way, shape, or form, which is huge for us. Hydrant inspections, over 17,000 fire hydrants in the city. And it's our job to touch them all every year, as you can imagine. That's one of our big resources in what we do. And when we have a big fire, so we got to 99% of them. There's probably about 130 that had various problems along the way that the water department, Seattle Public Utilities is working with us on. But that's a pretty big deal to touch over 17,000 fire hydrants. And that's pretty important for us right there. And then Health One. Lots of work going on in the scene with Health One. The average time on scene with Health One is approximately 56 minutes, and that's getting higher. And that's pretty important to note, because on most of our calls, we probably spend 15 to 20 minutes, but on Health One calls, they really take the time with the two firefighters and the case manager to find out what the person needs. Is it a doctor's appointment? Is it your prescriptions filled? Is it a ride to a shelter? Is it crisis management? Whatever it may be, they take the time to figure it out. And so throughout the course of 2023, over 1,115 direct responses, but over 2,900 referrals from the other firefighters in the city. So that's close to over 4,000 contacts that our Health One units had, and that becomes really important. Over 2,100 referrals, and we reject a lot of them for a variety of reasons. They may already be in our system, or they don't meet the criteria, or the team is just is running so many calls they just can't get to them all. High utilizers is the number one reason why we get those referrals from our firefighters. We may have people in the system who call us over and over and over and over again. So when those things happen, we ask them to refer those calls to Health One, because generally there's more going on with the person that we really need to take the time to figure out. In 2023, we had 835 new enrollments into the system. That becomes pretty important because we have over 30 firefighters who participate with our Health One team and our case managers, and all of them are not on the street every day. On many days throughout the week, we have case managers at our headquarters actually doing the follow-up on these people who are enrolled in our Health One system. It can be vulnerable adults, which are older adults who may not be connected to family or services and things like that. But our case managers really work hard behind the scenes to figure out what they need. Let's see, Health 99, we put that unit in service in June, and that unit is responding to overdoses only. So we had 3 Health One units, and we converted one into Health 99. And what it does every day is it responds to overdoses. And that is a big deal. There's a lot of stress on the firefighters and the case manager who work on that. But, they've had a lot of overdose response and direct response. And the goal is to get people into services. And they've had some victory along the way. They give Narcan along the way. So there's a lot going on with Health One, and the team really does an amazing job. Another tool, I think a question came in about our online data sets and different things like that. But one of the things, that's not something that we populate. But if you download PulsePoint to your phones or to your devices, you can actually get all of our responses related to whether it's the immediate dispatch, what type of calls were going on, and even the locations in the city. And if you want to be notified because you know CPR, and you could set the mileage radius in a quarter mile of your home, if there's a cardiac event within whatever the radius you set, you can be notified directly, and you can go and actually try to help. So this is public. You can download PulsePoint, but this way you can use this tool to see what's happening in the Seattle Fire Department. You may, measure what you want to be notified of, because it's pretty busy out there each and every day. You may not want to be notified of everything. There's over 300 calls that go out each and every day that we're responding to, but maybe there's some that you want to be notified on. So this is a tool, and I'll ask Kim to drop that in the chat also, if she can. Let's see here. So some of our most significant calls. Every year, it seems like if our scenes of violence calls have been going up. The dark green line is 2023, but if you look at the bottom chart, it tells, we had 511 scenes of violence calls in 2023, and the year before we had 450, the year before 452, and then in 4 years ago 350. So we're seeing a steady rise in the violence calls, and that's the shootings, stabbings, assaults, and all of those things. So we go on all of those calls, and we provide patient care once SPD has cleared the scene. But this is an area where we're clearly seeing a steady rise and increase in the number of violent calls. And the reason why 24 doesn't have any yellow on the screen is because we just started. We're only a few days into it. And fire in buildings, we had over 300 last year, and the year before 323. But many of those 300 fires were pretty significant fires, building fires, vehicle fires. So it was a pretty busy year for us. Of those 309 fires, 42 were in vacant buildings. You've probably been seeing on the news a lot about vacant building fires. That's been a real challenge for us, and we're really working with the other city departments and the property owners to try to figure this one out and get them to secure the buildings or demolish the buildings. And then overdoses. Let me see if I can turn the printer off. It's making a lot of noise here. Overdoses. Overdoses are something that's keeping us busy. And if you just look across the screen at the top, between 5 and 10. So every day we're pretty much going on 5 to 10 overdoses every single day. There's some high days when we're above 10. In November, we had some days where we were above 20. But that's something that really keeps us busy. And we have a lot of tracking systems in the fire department. So for example, this column on the right, I can see, in the last 90 days, how many overdoses these units have gone on. I can see their locations, the primary impressions, final patient acuity. So this is a lot of information at a glance that tells me what the landscape is and the conversations that we need to be having inside the department and outside of the department. And then high utilizing locations. As you can imagine, downtown keeps us busy. 3rd and Pike is our busiest response location in the city. Over 474 times we went there last year. And that was the #1 response. And the blue is EMS and the red is fire. #2 location is the Hobson at 1911 22nd Avenue South on Rainier. And so you can see on and on and on. But we have a lot of locations in the city that keep us very busy. And we're able to sort this in a number of different ways, but it helps us know the conversations we need to have. So for example, 500 Fifth Avenue, that's the jail. Earlier in the year, I had a conversation with the jail administrator, and we're trying to come up with strategies on how to reduce that number of responses at the jail. And then this is just some more data on overdoses because there's just a lot happening on that front. You can see in the last 90 days, we had over 1,000 overdoses in the city of all types. And this is our weekly counts, 77, 81, 89, 73. So we're tracking that over a 90-day period. Homeless or not homeless, we're tracking that. Not homeless is 42%, but clearly close to 60% of our overdoses are in the homeless arena. And then what time of day are they coming in? You can see pretty much around noon to probably 9 or 10 o'clock at night is when we have most of our overdoses. And this helps us with our planning and a variety of things like that. And then our homeless related responses. As I mentioned, we had about 111,000 calls in 2023. And you can clearly see over 10% are in the homeless environment. Over 1,300 were fires in and around encampment, and over 13,000 were medical related responses in and around encampments. So that's something that's really keeping us busy out there. And then just a few updates. I mentioned earlier, we added Ladder 13 and Med 26. They were fully funded this year. That was a big deal for us. New Fire Station 31. We finally came out of the bidding process. A contractor has been selected. So that's the Northgate Station. It will finally start construction. We'll be having a groundbreaking coming up pretty soon. As you may have heard, Washington Task Force 1 was the first task force in the United States out the door to respond to Maui to help with the search and rescue mission. And they had a really, really difficult job. Their job was to grid out that area and search all of the burned out structures to identify bodies and people that were lost. And our units go out the door, whether it's to hurricanes or wildfires. We generally always have a number of people going out the door somewhere to help, not just in Washington, but all over the U.S. We're just over a year into our nurse navigation program, and we just added another AI feature to it. So our nurse navigation program is if a person calls 911 and it does not meet the protocol of a dispatch, we can now transfer that call 24/7 to a nurse navigation team. They can spend the time that's needed. They can set up doctor's appointment. They can do self-care. They can do all of those things that keeps the call out of the 911 system. And approximately 90% of those calls stay out of the 911 system, which keeps our units available. We've really been working hard on our behavioral health training. As you can imagine, our firefighters see a lot of trauma each and every day, just a ton of trauma, from cardiac events to violent events to vehicle extrication, just a lot of loss. So about a year and a half ago, we brought on a behavioral health coordinator, and we've really been focusing on resilience training because PTSD is a big deal. And, we're really seeing a lot of the impacts from that. In July of 2022, we had our last firefighter suicide. And, the things that our firefighters are seeing each and every day, it really weighs heavy on them, and it can become overwhelming. So our behavioral health coordinator and our entire team really do a great job on that front. Our Seattle Fire Foundation has really been working hard to support us with so many different things, providing funding for our behavioral health training, thermal imaging cameras. We're in the process of purchasing 2 rescue watercraft for our rescue swimmer program that will be launched this summer, wellness fitness equipment for our fire stations. They support our therapy dog programs. We provide scholarships in the fire science program at North Seattle College. We support the Burn Foundation and then the Burn Unit up at Harborview, ballistic vests and helmets, and the list just goes on and on and on. They do an amazing job. They support our awards luncheon this in 2024. If any of you are available, look for April 18th. We do an annual awards luncheon recognizing the amazing work that our firefighters do. It'll be at the Embassy Suites. It's generally from about 11:30 to 1, but the date's been selected and the advertisements will probably start to come soon. And I'll make sure Kim gets that to your group so you have that information. And then our foundation will be doing our second gala this year on May 30th, and that's to raise funds to continue to support the Seattle Fire Department. This year we were fortunate and we were selected by the Gary Sinise Foundation and Amazon for a $150,000 donation. And what we purchased with that was special gloves for rescue extrication that our firefighters can wear, and put more money into our behavioral health training. So that's a little bit there. And then if we were looking over the fence, I think it was titled wish list. So if we were looking ahead, our oldest building in the fleet is our headquarters building, built in 1928. And, it looks historic and beautiful from the outside, but inside, the bones are almost 100 years old, and we're in the liquefaction zone. So we continue to work through that. A North End training site, as the city gets busier and busier, it becomes more challenging to send the units from the north end of the city to the south end of the city for training. Staffing additional Health 1 units at Fire Station 31. We're building that station with room for another Health 1 unit. So we want to have one in the north end of the city, and it will be room for it there. So we'll be working to try to get that funded. And as you can imagine, as the city grows, we really are trying to keep alive the South Lake Union fire station conversation. It's opening up a new fire station down in the South Lake Union area. And if you can blink your eye and look back 20 years ago, and then blink again and look today, you'll see the population has really changed there. And we also want to bring our freshwater boats over into that area. And then additional aid units to help with a lot of the lower acuity calls. So
Chief
I
Scoggins,
know.
I'm going to interrupt.
Yes.
I can give you, perfect timing. I can give you about 5 more minutes. And we have a ton of questions. So I'm sorry, you were just finishing up. Let me have you finish your last few words. And then how about if I choose a few of the questions in the chat?
Sounds good. And did I stop sharing? I think I tried to do that.
You did. You did it perfectly. Okay, so let me just grab a few of these. We don't have a ton of time, but Captain Agard says she can give you a little of her time. And let's see, how about nearby suburban fire departments have been in the news talking about the increase in local brush fires, et cetera, because of drought and the impact on their workload. Is SFD seeing impacts on this too?
From grass fires and the overall call load, we're seeing it. But when those fires in our suburban areas around Western and Eastern Washington get big, we have a wildland response team. So we send folks out to help them too. In Seattle, we're pretty much built out, and we have areas where we have grass, but we don't have a significant wildland fire hazard because everything has a contiguous border of a freeway or a road or something like that. But we do go to help our neighbors.
Okay, great. Question, are you receiving, it says still receiving, I don't know if you are receiving a lot of false alarm calls?
Oh yeah, that's a challenge that we have been trying to work through. Just before COVID, we got the council to pass legislation where if we have 3 false alarms and if an address has 3 false alarms in a 3-month period, we can start the process to bill them for the false alarms. And to give you perspective, we can't seem to crack the code here. COVID shut us down. We didn't send the invoices. We're just getting ramped up. But in 2023, we had close to 7,000 false alarms. So that's a real problem for us.
Wow. Let's see. Any thoughts on dealing with encampment fires?
Well, a lot of thoughts. We've tried a lot of different things, but encampments are a different animal because sometimes they're dangerous to our folks. We tried putting the fires out from a distance. We've tried attacking them from multiple angles. And all those things work, but generally putting the fire out is not the problem. It's if the people in the encampment are going to be aggressive. We know they're going to have propane tanks and different things like that. And, when they get heated up or they're compromised, we know some of them will pop and blow up. And we know all about that thing. And so that's not the big deal. But keeping our firefighters safe in the encampments, that's the number one thing we worry about. And sometimes we actually have to pull out because our firefighters will face threats with weapons or rocks, and we'll pull out, we'll call SPD. But what that means is the fire continues to grow or the medical call continues to get worse. But for our firefighter safety, that's the biggest deal we have to worry about. The fires go out pretty quick once we get there.
I think I'll do just one more. What is the procedure for an overdose call? For example, are people always taken to a hospital, always referred to a substance abuse program, et cetera?
So generally, what happens is if a person overdoses and someone gets there and they gives them Narcan and they come back and they're alert and oriented, it's on them. It's their decision. And many times they'll just walk away and say, "I don't want any further treatment." Sometimes we don't get them fully back. We'll get them to the hospital, and if we get them back, our Health 99 team, they're called, and their number one job is to talk them into going to get treatment. So that's one of the things that we've really been working hard for. We hope this month we'll be launching some news to the community and giving our firefighters a new skill ability to apply some of those the drugs that will get you off of those drugs to start a treatment plan right out in the field. So we hope to announce something like that later this month. We've been working hard on it with our medical director. We've been working to get approval from the state. And if we get this approval, we'll probably be the first in the state and maybe second or third in the nation to actually do something like this.
Right. And I'm just going to say I lied. I'm going to ask you one more question because there's another good one in here. How many of the arsonists setting the vacant buildings on fire have been caught in 2023? And I'll add on to that. Do you have sufficient investigative staff?
Yes, I think we have a sufficient team to do the investigations. Um, the fires that were just set, you may have heard about at the Buddhist temple, for example. In the last couple of days, there's been an arrest. SPD Arson Bomb Squad did some great work there, working with our investigators. But oftentimes, when the fires are burned in these vacant buildings and it burns so hot, it may burn up any and all evidence how that fire even started. So unless we generally have a witness that comes forward that helps us with that, it becomes pretty challenging. So a lot of times it's undetermined, many times.
Great. Well, thank you. We sent a ton of questions to you, and you got a ton here. And I would say we do have some more out there. Perhaps what we could do is work with Kim to see if there's any other data we could have you guys send over that we could share with the minutes, if that's possible. But I want to thank you very much. This was great. It was really, really helpful to hear from you about what's going on with the fire department, and we really appreciate your time.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for having me. And anything you need from the SFD, please reach out and send those questions over, and we'll get responses back to you. And I'll share this presentation with you, so you'll have that also.
Thank you. We very much appreciate that. Okay.
Right.
Thank you very much. All right. And also, thank you to Captain Agard. We really appreciate you giving a little of your time over. Let me add the spotlight to you. And there you go. You're on. Thank you.
Okay, that was a great presentation. I learned a lot. It was very interesting. So to switch over to the North Precinct, we've been busy. It's been a busy month in December at the North Precinct. We don't have our year-end report out as far as crime analysis and kind of breaking down everything, but that should be coming out soon. And that will be interesting to look at. But looking at year to date, just for the North Precinct, crime overall, if you factor in all the different categories, it's down 9% this year as compared to 2022 at this same time. The two categories for year to date that were higher this year was homicide. It was 13% higher. And then motor vehicle theft just continues to climb, and that was 43% higher than last year. And that's been, these categories and these stats are pretty consistent across the city with increases in those two categories. Shots fired year to date, we're down 7% in the North Precinct. And then if you look at the last just 28 days, which would be just December, it was busy. So the last 28 days, the overall crime went up 2%, with violent crime going up 11%, and property crime only went up like 1%. The category that was down though in the last 28 days was our shots fired, which was down 29%. But then if you look at motor vehicle theft, it went up 86% in the last 28 days. So you're looking at a busy month in the North Precinct. And breaking down, if you break down the shots fired year to date, there were a total of 102 confirmed shots fired, meaning that we responded to a shots fired call. It wasn't just like fireworks. We actually found casings or some kind of evidence that there were shots fired. Out of that 43, there were, no, in addition to that, there were 43 non-fatal shootings and 12 fatal shootings by firearms. And then, you know, with these big numbers with the motor vehicle theft, our North Patrol has just continued to try to combat that by recovering stolen vehicles. We've been recovering numerous occupied stolen vehicles, and within those cars, we get guns and other evidence of crimes. So we do a lot in that area. I don't know if anyone noticed last night, a good example of this down on Lake City Way. It was completely shut down both ways. What happened last night, it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Reports came in that 2 cars had crashed. And when officers got to the scene, there were 2 cars that were crashed into the median into the same. It was kind of interesting because it was just this little tree and 2 cars were crashed into this little tree. And witnesses had said that the occupants of these cars, there were multiple occupants. They ran out of the car and jumped into another car and left the scene. Officers got there, determined that both those cars were stolen, and they had been just involved in a street robbery. And then somehow they were probably driving recklessly and then crashed. They left a girl in one of the cars that was seriously injured, and she's currently in Harborview. The car that picked up the occupants was also stolen. So right there, that's 3 stolen cars. And then while the officers were on scene there, another 911 call came in where someone had got carjacked. Someone came up to their car with a gun, got in the car with a gun and kidnapped him, put a gun up and said, "Hey, drive." And so they were driving around, and the victim was driving the car with the suspect in the passenger seat telling him to drive. Officers located this car in the area, and a pursuit ensued. So they're pursuing this car. Eventually, the car suddenly slows down. The driver jumps out of the car while it's still rolling to get away, and the suspect jumps out of the car, and then officers pursue him on foot, and then they catch him, and they find out that he was the driver of the car back at the scene that had left the girl. It was his girlfriend that was in the car, left her there at the scene. So he was arrested. So that's just an example of how these stolen cars kind of impact the city and the good work that officers are doing to try to combat it. So staffing, I know I always get a question about staffing. We're getting 2 new officers this month at the North Precinct. Probably, actually, maybe 3. We're going to get a 3rd a little bit later, but we've also had more than that resign or retire. So we're getting new officers, but the attrition is kind of a little higher than the new officers we're getting. But we're going to be hiring more this 2024. So we're hopeful that, maybe we can get some higher numbers into the academy to try to up our numbers. But we're still struggling with that. I'd like to get some of those Seattle Fire applicants that are filling out. We should go over there and say, hey, come to SPD. They seem to have a lot of applicants there. But yeah, does anyone have any questions, concerns, anything like that I can answer? I'll look in the chat here.
I'm just scrolling through here for you. I think there were some earlier ones that were more yours than the chief. Um, so I'm not sure if this one is for you. I don't think it was, I'm not sure, but the question is about the temporary fire station at North 130th Street, the modular housing and COVID isolation units sat abandoned for at least 1.5 years. It was recently reopened as a tiny home village, allegedly under management from Catholic Community Services, but there's been zero community engagement or awareness. Do you happen to know, was that land owned by the fire department, or is
Yeah,
it a problem area for you now?
You know, that whole area up there, 130th, is always a problem area just on the whole with the prostitution and the hotels up there. But I don't know what the who owns that, or I don't have an update on that. Jane, do you know? I know you're kind of involved up in that area. She's our CSO that works north. She does awesome work up there, and I see you're here, and I bet you might have a little more information about that.
Yeah, I apologize. I have a little cold here. Is this the
Yeah.
tiny village on Lake City? Which specifically are we talking about?
I think it was the one of 130th. It used to be, I guess, COVID housing or something next to the fire station.
I have never been to that location, actually.
Okay.
I don't have an update on that.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, we'll have to, I guess we should have asked Chief Scoggins that one, because I don't know either.
Well, it sounds like it's a mixture of things going on. It sounds like there's some real challenges. Okay, let's see. Let's scroll.
You know, they that might be, you know, we have a challenge with the Sam's Club parking lot. There's been a big encampment there up in that area as well.
Okay. Let's see. Somebody just notes that there will be a South Precinct Advisory Council meeting on January 17th, if anybody on this call is interested. Let's see.
I see one on Golden Gardens. They're asking about follow-up regarding the shooting of multiple people at Golden Gardens Dog Park earlier in the fall. Is anyone being charged? Was the person who was killed defending themselves, or were they the instigator? Any other contacts can be shared? I know I did talk to the homicide detective that was investigating that. I can't get super specific about it. I was at that scene as well, so there are some. It's a tricky case because there is some self-defense involved. What it appeared the night of was a little different after investigating it. So there is some self-defense claims there. I'm not sure who will get charged with it, but there was some self-defense claims.
Okay. Here's another one. Is the high rate of car theft still related to Hyundais and Kias?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I think all three at the scene at Lake City were Hyundais.
Okay. Question for the captain. On the night of December 23rd, a person was found deceased in a vehicle on Leary Way in Ballard. Medical examiner reportedly came, but then handed off the homicide unit. I don't believe any news or blotter reports have been posted. Can any info be shared?
In Ballard.
On December 23rd on Leary Way.
Right. I haven't heard any update on that, so I do not know what happened on that one. I can try to find out for the next one though and give an update then.
Okay.
I'll write it down. I'll make a note of that.
Okay. Somebody is asking, is there any news regarding vehicular assaults?
Vehicular assaults.
Yes.
Well, I know our police cars are getting rammed all the time when we're trying to stop these stolen occupied cars, because we'll come in and try to arrest them, and they ram their way out almost every time. So I know our patrol cars and our officers are victims of vehicular assault all the time. Was this in regards to the Aurora where they were?
This
They were-
person just asked that without reference to the location.
I don't have a lot of news about that. That hasn't been on my radar, except for the people that were doing the Facebook stuff up on Aurora. That was the only
Right.
one that a pattern one that was happening.
I'm gonna guess that was the one that was.
Yeah,
Two that were
I
being
know.
referenced.
yeah, I know I know the department's investigating that. I don't know if they've made any arrests in that yet.
Okay. Diane is saying that Cairo News has said tonight there was also a purse snatching in Lake City, Lake City. Is that a continuing pattern in that area?
Did that happen tonight, or could that have been the one from the one yesterday?
It
'Cause
might
I
have
know
been yesterday. Cairo reported on it today.
Today, I bet that was linked to the cars that crashed that were fleeing from a strong arm robbery that they were just doing. That could have been what they were reporting, because right before they crashed, I think they were running from the scene from strong arm robbery. But no, that hasn't been a pattern in Lake City.
Okay. Let's see. Are you seeing repeat juvenile offenders, aka gang members, committing the Kia thefts?
Absolutely, yeah. The suspects that tend to be stealing cars and doing crimes have largely been juveniles. And I know, following up on like the student robberies in around the Ballard area, they made several arrests for bump and robs and gas station robberies, and most were juveniles. Yeah, I mean, I think even one was like 11 years old, so they're young.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Another question, is it possible to clarify how the CSO program will relate to the new care team? Is there overlap?
Oh, Jane, do you know, have they told you guys yet? Might as well get it from the person that is going to be working with them. Have they informed you yet what your role is going to be with them?
Well, not quite yet, but I heard a good description today. So the care team, they've been going out to calls for about a month now. And someone explained it to me this morning, some of our supervisors, that if it's a police related issue, it's going to be a CSO going to the call. If it's a crisis related issue, it's going to be a care call. There is a little overlap right now, but I think in the next couple months, there'll be, I think the next 6 months, it's a process and it's new. The care team, they actually went through and looked at 75 other cities in the United States that has a team like care. It's named differently. And so right now the care team's new. They have 6 people. I think they have 2 supervisors and 4 employees. They want to grow that. I wouldn't be surprised if we were all working together at some point. We do have interaction with each other, but sometimes, yes, the calls do overlap. If the care team goes out on a call and then there's a transport to a shelter, the care team's going to take that person to a shelter. They're not going to call a CSO to come take them to a shelter. CSOs can also work long-term on neighborhood issues. So I've worked a lot with North Seattle neighbors concerning encampments, concerning they had a burglar in their home. They want to know what the update was, how they find out who the detective was. So a lot of those type of neighborhood issues, and I will throw my name in the chat for everybody. Certainly let me be your resource for the North Precinct. I'm really a bridge between the community and the Seattle Police Department. But it'll be interesting. Right now, CARE is just focused on downtown and the West Precinct for the next couple months is what I've heard, and they'll be growing and hiring.
Yeah,
And that's kind of my update.
Thank you. It's nice to have you on the call. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks.
No, it's great. Yeah, it's the pilot. They're calling it a pilot project. And
that's right.
Yeah, and actually, the new chief, Amy Smith, is, oh man, she's awesome, and she wants to be a guest on here at NPAC, and whenever we could get her, she will be an awesome speaker, and she is eager to come and speak. So let me know anytime you want her, because we can get her to come and speak and kind of fill in, you know, her vision and what she's done. She's really good.
Yeah, I agree. She's great.
Yeah.
She's
Speaker.
on our list coming up. We'll be
Oh, good, good. You guys are gonna love her.
Angie wants to say she really appreciates the CSOs. And another follow-up question, are CSOs appropriate for referring small landlords who are dealing with problematic tenant communication situations?
You know, I'm happy to talk to some of those folks. That was a real focus during COVID. We had some CSOs working with different entities and different parties and helping them understand eviction rules. A lot of that's just posted online. So, you know, you can bend the CSO's ear and certainly reach out to us, because there's some CSOs that have kind of specialized in that. So sure, let me put my name, and if you have an issue, you can just email me directly. We also have an email on, and I'll put it in the chat as well, that's checked 24/7 by our supervisors, a general email address, but it's faster just to go with me. So I work Monday through Thursday. So I'll put my my name in the chat, and if anyone wants to reach out to me and have a specific question, there's 20 CSOs. I can forward it to somebody and then get back to you.
That would be great. Thank you. So Rudy, you've been patiently having your hand raised. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, Captain Agard, thank you for being on the screen. We'd love to invite you to our neighborhood sandwich making next Tuesday, or one of the second Tuesdays of the month. So people get to have the opportunity to get to know you in person, not just on the screen. We had Amy Smith at our last sandwich meeting with one of the chiefs, Seattle police chiefs, and we had a great event. We learned a lot about that new care unit. And but we would love to see you or Officer Cruzan, if he's still in there. Bring him along.
He's on the call. He's on the call. Yeah, can you reach out to me and email me the dates?
Sure.
And that way I can get it. That would be fun, and I'm sure I could bring Mike along too.
Yeah, you know, it just take an hour, 45 minutes. We make 250 sandwiches for Family Works in Wallingford, Compass Housing Alliance, and Operation Night Watch that does some work along the Aurora corridor. So you might enjoy it. Be something out of the regular genre. Thank you.
No, thank you, Rudy. I appreciate it. Yeah, reach out. Let me know what the dates are.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Okay. Angie also is busy talking tonight via chat. She says, we miss having Officer Cruzan as a community police team officer in Ballard. So he's appreciated.
Oh, well, he's still out there. He does a lot of work in Ballard. So he's not part of the community police team, but he's still assigned to Ballard there and does a lot of work there.
Great. I think we've captured all the questions so far. Anything else? You want to have some Happy New Year wishes?
Yeah.
You need them.
No, I'm looking forward to the new year. We're just now trying to get our priorities and some plans in place, and do some targeted augmentations, you know, looking at the MCPP on what different communities are concerned about from all those meetings that they've been having. So we have that in the plan to move forward with that as soon as we can get it approved. So we got some good stuff going on this year.
Great. Okay, well, I think with that, we will move on. Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Happy New
Appreciate it.
Year.
Stay healthy.
You too.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Casey McNerthney, there you are. Happy New Year.
You too, Kenny. Good to see everybody.
Spotlight you on. You're wearing the right shirt.
Yes.
Good for you.
Yeah, our North Precinct team is gonna be the blue. It'll be great.
Okay.
A couple updates that I want to follow up on from the chief and the captains, their segments. The Temple fire that the chief mentioned, we argued that that suspect should be held on $100,000 bail because of the danger to the community. The first appearance judge, after hearing from both sides, set bail at $40,000. We anticipate getting that case tomorrow for a charging decision, so we should have that by 4:30. And I'll make sure to keep our media list updated, so you should see an update on that tomorrow afternoon. One thing that we're looking forward to sharing in 24 is, in addition to our current data dashboard that we have available, which shows the number of charge cases and referrals, and also by crime type for adult cases, is showing a dashboard for juvenile cases too, because there are understandable questions around that, and we want to have more transparency, because the more transparency we can have around adult and juvenile cases, the better. We're in a little bit of a trickier spot there because of the state laws around juvenile crime and what can be shared. But for the most part, they will look largely the same. And I think that'll be helpful for folks. We should have that, if not by the next meeting, by the one after that. We should have it up in the first quarter of 24. So I'll make sure and share that with this group here when we have it launched. And maybe we can even get David Baker back to walk through it with us, because I think it'll be pretty helpful. One thing that came up when the captain was talking is about car thefts. And what you'll see when that juvenile dashboard is released, I have to just share this with a reporter today, is that we're seeing many Kia and Hyundai thefts. And it's so frustrating to see, because you're not seeing those with Mercedes, you're not seeing them with Hondas or Toyotas. You're seeing an incredibly disproportional amount of Kias being stolen. And just like SPD was saying, we're seeing those also used in robbery cases and very serious collisions. And it's so frustrating to see. And when you carjack somebody, when you are involved in an armed robbery, when you crash a car into a business like that, that's not a case that's going to go to diversion. Class A felonies, which are the most serious cases, including carjackings, those go before a judge, and they should, and they're going to keep doing that. It's so frustrating to see those numbers. The 11-year-old that was mentioned, we also had some limitations too. Not many people realize that when you have somebody who's under age 12, state law won't allow prosecutors to handle that case through court, and so that's sent as what's called a statutory referral. But for the many people who we are seeing, we have charged more of those cases of just strictly car thefts, not looking at the cases that also involve robberies, which are a separate category. We have brought more. I think I don't know the numbers offhand, but I think many more of those cases before a judge than we have sent to diversion, because of the seriousness of those and the dangers that we see associated with those. In terms of Golden Gardens, I don't think that case has been referred to us yet, but I know that our homicide prosecutors were out at that scene as well. And if or when that comes to us, we'll act on it with the same kind of urgency. Someone asked about vehicular assaults, and across the state and the nation, we're seeing vehicular assaults continue to be higher than we want them. The number of people driving terribly, the number of reports of those. I mean, people really started driving terribly during the pandemic, and part of the theory in that is because the roads were open, but it never stopped when traffic patterns went back to normal. And so we're seeing an unusually high number of vehicular homicides. Fortunately, we have the felony traffic unit and Amy Friedheim, who has been handling those cases in King County for 3+ decades. She really is the best in the state. But even she would say the volume of the work is a big concern. But those are the updates that I wrote down here. Oh, also one more note. One thing that I did for a good portions of 21 and 22 and 23 were to routinely update the captains or folks in the community about the cases that are charged each day. Just the routine ones that don't make the news, but are still very serious felony crimes. And I have gone through periods, usually around vacations, where I lag on that. So one of my resolutions is to be more consistent with that. And I'll make sure to share that with the folks in this group too. Let me take a look in the chat and see if there's any questions, or if folks have them, please feel free to shout those out. Is there a site that shows the judge's name and the bail decision? There isn't. And that's one thing that I think is frustrating for folks. But also, I think part of why that is because the context of the arguments there influence the court's decisions. But there isn't an easy way to look at it other than going to the clerk's office and getting that audio and those court details, which I think we've heard from some folks is frustrating, because with the jail roster, for example, which is a different animal, a different thing, but there isn't that kind of clear way to look and see what the arguments were, even at a very basic level. So let's see.
Casey, I have a question, and actually follow on to that. Is part of the issue around the risk to judges and officers of the court generally around, some violence that happens if people decide they don't like what that person has decided for any reason?
I think so, probably. We've certainly heard of extreme cases where judges have received threats, in some cases death threats. That's a big problem, because a lot of times the people who, in every case that I've heard of, where the information is available, the people who are making those threats or who are good and pissed off don't understand the court rules and the obligations that very often judges have to follow, or prosecutors or defense attorneys. Here's an example. So if prosecutors make a bail argument at a first appearance, unless we receive significantly updated information with the referral for charges, we can't re-argue a bail amount. And a lot of times people look at prosecutors and say, hey, why didn't you care to make this case? Why didn't you care to go before and to try to have this person held again? It's because court rules statewide, not just in King County or Seattle, say you can't do that. There's also, some cases involving juveniles, like assault in the fourth degree with sexual motivation. State lawmakers have said that is required to be a mandatory court diversion case. And so when people look at that and say, oh, you're choosing to divert this case, it's not that we're choosing to, it's that state law says you have to do it. It's the same thing with that case of somebody who's 11. We don't have the option to file that case. And there are many more cases where we do file it, in terms of high profile cases that you've probably heard about is what I'm referring to. And if anybody has a question about a case, please reach out. And as we share more with the Seattle Council and with the County Council and the Exec's office and the Mayor's office, we'll make sure to share that with the NPAC board too.
Great. There's a couple more there for you.
Let's see. Any questions? Any idea why so many judges run unopposed? I don't know. I don't know specifically, but it would sure be nice to have that reassurance of another 4 years without having to have a campaign. Let's see.
There was one above that. Do you think the new law will be immediately helpful?
I think it will. I've talked to Amy Friedhelm about that, and I believe that she spoke in support of that with state lawmakers. And I think what she would say, in best I can guess of what she would say without checking with her first, street racing is a major problem, and the more we can do to try to give law enforcement the tools to get us those cases with the evidence to be able to charge folks and to prove those cases beyond a reasonable doubt is really essential. And another area where we're seeing some difficulty is in terms of child endangerment cases. That law was last updated decades ago. So it mentions meth when meth was a big problem, but it doesn't mention fentanyl. And so that law needs to be updated. And that's an example of there are many well-intended laws that don't always have the updates for it. And so I think what Amy would say, and the reason why I brought up the fentanyl example, is the way it ties to the new street racing law. And I think Amy would say this in the felony traffic unit is the more you can review those laws to make them accurately reflect the problems that we're seeing currently this year, the better off everybody will be in general. And so hopefully that will be helpful. Was riding with a street racer a few nights ago with 50 Northgate. I jumped into bush. Wow, that does sound frightening. That's an area that I know well and have been to a lot. That's really scary.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Casey. You've taken a little extra time, and we had it tonight, and that's great. We appreciate hearing from you. Happy New Year.
You too.
Look forward to seeing you next month.
Sounds good. Thanks.
I think that we have reached the end of our time. NPAC board, do we have anything else to update folks on? I'm going to look to see if anybody nods at me. Nope, I think everybody's looking good. Well, thank you all for joining us. As always, we appreciate you joining. When we send the reminder, please always do feel free to send along questions when you see our email come through. What we do is try to collect questions for our speakers, and if you want to get yours in up front, please feel free to send it ahead, and we're happy to compile them all. That's how Chief Scoggins got all of that incredible information to give to us. So do that. Remember that we are now on Facebook. There is a wealth of information that's being sent out on a regular basis to connect you to resources, to remind you about SPD resources for crime prevention, the fire department updates and such that, again, to help us all avoid fires, avoid being victims of crime. So please follow us on Facebook. And with that, I think we are done. And I'm just going to say Happy New Year to you all. If the board would stay on, that would be great. Thank you all very much.